Warning: the following video contains extensive spoilers of the novel and film Gone Girl.
Today's case is one of lies and deceit. One in which a seemingly benign, attractive housewife constructs a fantastical and harrowing fate for herself, designed to hoodwink the police, media, and even her own family and friends. Themes which have led multiple media outlets to refer to the story of Sherri Papini as the real-life Gone Girl. But this video will argue that that comparison is a real reach. Because once you go below the most surface of surface-level similarities, the differences seem to never stop piling up. As mentioned, both the novel and film Gone Girl center around an attractive blonde who disappears herself, which would admittedly make a pretty good one-sentence summary of the Papini story. In Sherri's case, however, she was staging a fake kidnapping. Gone Girl's main antagonist, Amy Dunn, was attempting to fake her own murder with the intention of framing her husband Nick, though her plot did eventually have to evolve into a fake kidnapping after she got ripped off by some swamp trash in the Ozarks. Followed by a real blood-soaked murder that serves to make her story complete.
You fucking bitch.
There are no such thrilling twists and turns in Sherri's story though. At the risk of spoiling what lies ahead a little bit, 99% of her hoax involves just wincing and crying, then laughing and smiling sort of annoyingly for a time, before wincing and crying again. Rinse and repeat for several years until police are finally able to upgrade her story from highly suspect to demonstrably false, at which point she mainly just cries. Even the superficial differences between these fictional and real-life stories are numerous enough as to almost make it feel like novelist Gillian Flynn saw the future and tried to distance her work from this aggravating saga on purpose. Amy Dunn is the inspiration for the eponymous character in an iconic children's book series, Amazing Amy, and quietly resents the attention and comparisons her more idyllic counterpart brings her. Sherri Papini seems to have a craving for attention so pathological it would unlikely be satiated even if she were the basis for the character of Hermione Granger. The Dunns are childless. The Papinis have a boy and a girl. The Dunns are New Yorkers, living in Missouri. The Papinis are Californians, living in California. The Dunns have one cat. The Papinis have 2 dogs. Nick Dunn is sardonic and smug. Keith Papini is sweet and naive. Initially sympathetic, Amy Dunn is gradually revealed to be the cold, calculating orchestrator of a wickedly Machiavellian scheme, whose ability to see several steps ahead and wind up on top no matter what hurdles are thrown her way makes her about as scary as any villain you could pull from a comic book. When embodied by actress Rosamund Pike, you can feel a chill run down your spine as you look into her eyes and wonder how deep the darkness within them may run. Sherri Papini, on the other hand, is just a fucking idiot. If you're already familiar with this case, you won't need to be told that. If you're not, you'll see.
Hello, can I help you?
Hello? Yeah, I just got home from work, and my wife wasn't there, which is unusual, and my kids should have been there by now from, daycare. So I was like, oh, maybe she went on a walk. I couldn't find her, so I called the daycare to see what time she picked up the kids. The kids were never picked up, so I got freaked out, so I hit, the Find My iPhone app thing, and it said that it showed her phone, at our end of our driveway. We don't have really good service.
Okay.
Not the end of our driveway, but the end of our street. So I just drove down there, and I saw her phone with her headphones because she started running again. And I found her phone, and it's got, hair ripped out of it, in the headphones. So I'm, totally freaking out, thinking, somebody, grabbed her.
Okay, are you headed back to the house, or where are you at right now?
I'm at the end of the driveway where I'm at the Old Oregon Trail and Sunrise where they meet, because that's right where I found her phone, on the ground. You're telling me that something happened to her is the way I'm looking at it.
Introducing Keith Papini, who, to be very clear up front, had nothing to do with orchestrating the farcical scheme we're about to watch unfold. Yet all the same, what he just said, and the way it came out, was far more observant than even he realizes. When Keith first found Sherri's iPhone and headphones about a mile from their property on her jogging route, they just looked unnaturally easy to find. not obscured by foliage or dangerously close to oncoming traffic, but instead sitting upright near the pathway with not so much as a twig attempting to conceal them. The headphones sitting in a relatively neat bunch atop the phone. It didn't look so much like the phone of someone who's been kidnapped, but rather like the phone of someone who's trying to tell you they've been kidnapped. Or as Keith would put it to responding officers, it looked like it had been placed, which he thought was weird. Should have been a detective.
Did you go pick up your children?
No, I'm going to call my mom and have her do it.
Okay. What's your wife's name?
I'm going to, knock on every door. Sherri. Sherri. Then there was hair, in the headphones. It got ripped off, they grabbed it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know you're trying to keep me calm, obviously.
Yeah.
Think about Keith's current situation for a moment. He's just come home to find his wife missing shortly before discovering his 2 small children are stranded at daycare. Presumably out of his mind with panic, but still somehow managing to keep it all together, he attempts to rattle off as much helpful information as he can when the 911 operator takes a rather unmistakably condescending tone with him. His reaction to that is a self-deprecating laugh and sheepish apology for being such a motor mouth. There's no two ways about it. Keith Papini is a real sweetheart. It's not that that's really pertinent to the case as such. It's just always worth keeping in mind the sorts of people that Sherri Papini is going so out of her way to put in such distress.
When's the last time you heard from her?
She sent me a text asking me if I was coming home from lunch.
What time was
got
that?
A whole bunch of she sent me a text at 10:47 asking me if I was coming home from lunch from work.
And based on last reported sightings, that text was likely sent within an hour of her supposed abduction. It was a strange message, given there wasn't much reason to think Keith might be planning an unannounced trip home for lunch that day. Whether she was being especially safe the coast was clear, or just trying to sound like a woman who didn't have any plans of vanishing, it's a good example of Sherri's modus operandi. Even when she does show forethought, the way she executes her precautionary measures are always a little bit clumsy. Much unlike Amy Dunn from Gone Girl, who always makes sure to read up extensively on relevant forensic literature and victimology before initiating her dastardly schemes.
What time are the kids supposed to be picked up?
Way before 5:30. She usually goes at 4:45. Oh my God. And we live down kind of a sketchy street, so I don't know if I'm allowed to knock on everybody's door, but I will if I'm allowed to do that.
Let's just have the officers contact you so they can start, processing everything, figure out what's going on, okay? And I understand you're freaking out a little bit. We want to make sure we get your kids, make sure they're okay.
Yeah, I'm going to call my mom and have her.
Yeah, they've been stuck at your phone number.
Happily, the kids were okay, if not a little confused, and they weren't the only ones. Unlike the investigators in Gone Girl, who immediately spotted several red flags meticulously planted for their discovery, the police who arrived at the Papini residence could find no signs of foul play whatsoever, barring the questionably discarded phone. It's around this point in the Gone Girl timeline that we cut to Amy Dunn triumphantly driving a second-hand Ford Festiva, having purchased the modest-looking vehicle in order to not attract unwanted attention. As she drives toward the Ozarks, she reveals to the audience the deviously intricate plan she's put in place to frame her husband for her murder, as vengeance for his infidelity, as well as other spousal failings. Sherri Papini, meanwhile, is lying down in the back seat of a Dodge Challenger, in her jogging gear, proving no matter how hot your ride, you can still look like a jackass inside of it. Behind the wheel is her ex-boyfriend James Reyes. Reyes had gotten an employee to rent the car for him without specifying a purpose. He didn't really think the make and model would matter all that much, though he hadn't been expecting a sports car. And don't worry, Sherri has no plans on trying to frame poor faithful Keith for murder or anything else for that matter. All she's trying to do is... let's not worry too much about what exactly Sherri Papini is trying to do right now. It's too early for that. All you need to know for the time being is that she's going to be camped out at her ex-boyfriend's place for a bit, alright? And while she's doing that, the police will be doing what they do, namely, trying to figure out just what on earth is going on. And as questionable as things may have looked, even at first glance, they still went about their investigation in the only responsible way they could, which was to treat Sherri's disappearance as a legitimate kidnapping, making sure to get the word out as much as possible and interviewing every friend, family member, suspect and person of interest they could find. When the investigators in Gone Girl did the same, pretty much everyone only had nice things to say about Amy Dunn. Ingratiating herself with those around her was yet another part of her staging. Sherri Papini, however, clearly did not think that far ahead, because even in the midst of being a high-profile missing person, with all of the sympathy that comes along with said status, the final picture that emerged from these accumulated interviews was still less than glowing. Another ex-boyfriend who dated her in high school described Papini as, quote, an attention-hungry person who told stories to try to get attention, and that she had leveled false accusations of abuse toward more than one member of her family, as well as himself after their breakup. Such recollections were backed up by other friends from Sherri's youth, who also recalled her as being known for making up lies, particularly about being the victim of abuse, and that she was known to run away from home. Even her more contemporary associates, while far from universally scathing in their characterizations of Sherri, still acted a little squeamish when it came to questions you'd expect to be no-brainers for most people under these sorts of circumstances.
Do you think that she is missing not voluntarily? I don't know. I believe that she is, because if she were missing voluntarily, I know one of the interviews that Suzanne has given mentioned something about if she were running away, she wouldn't have left her phone. Nothing. I just feel like if she had run away, she would have contacted somebody in her family to at least let them know something. Yeah, she hasn't contacted you? No. So I, at this point, considering that it's been a week, I do believe that she's taken against her will. I think I believe that.
Even Keith Papini, who never once suggested that his wife would do something as crazy as faking all of this, seemed to at times almost be daring himself to ask that question aloud.
And the phone, the picture, I mean, that's weird how it's like been placed. Would you guys say it's been placed, not thrown? It's weird.
We've been verbally told there's nothing alarming.
Is this the craziest one you've been involved in?
Unfortunately, no.
Ugh. It's the least amount of evidence, though, I bet. No?
Like we've said, we have started with...
This guy, vanished.
We've started with 0.
But Keith wouldn't have to anguish over his wife's fate for too much longer, because on Thanksgiving morning, 3 weeks after her initial disappearance, it was time for Sherri Papini's return.
911 emergency, what are you reporting?
Hi, I have an emergency. I don't know my location. There's a lady on the side of the road needing help.
You don't know where this is, but I don't know where you are.
Oh, you can't?
No, sir. Your phone bounces off cell towers. It doesn't give me your exact location, not on a cell phone.
What?
Are you traveling? Are you driving?
Oh, crap.
Do you know about what city you're in?
No. I know. Please stay there, okay? Please stay there.
Okay, sir. First of all, take all precautions. Sir, I want you to take all precautions for your safety. I have an officer en route because we've had reports of a female trying to flag people down. Does that sound about the same?
Yeah, it's right outside of Yolo.
Okay.
She's saying that she got kicked out of her boyfriend's...
Okay, just be safe where you are. What's wrong with her? Ask her what's wrong with her.
Hey, what's hurting? You're chained up.
She's chained up?
She's chained up, her vision's blurry, and she needs an ambulance.
Do you see her chained up?
Yes. Her name is Sherri Papini.
Can she talk at all?
Yeah, here.
Please. Sherri, I need you to listen to me. Listen to me. Do you know where you are?
No. I've been in the car. Yes,
Okay. Sweetie, listen. Listen to me. I need you to take a deep breath. Are you chained up?
Yes.
Okay, take a deep breath, sweetie. Who chained you up? Do you know the person or were you kidnapped?
No. I don't know. I never saw her face.
Listen to what I'm asking. Listen to what I'm asking. Sherri, take a deep breath. How did you get chained up? What happened?
They took me.
Who took you? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
No, there was two of them.
Okay, listen. I have help on the way.
I want to call my husband. I want to call my husband.
We will get help with you and we will get your husband, but right now I need you to help me help you. Deep breath.
He can't see very well.
I understand.
I want to call my husband.
Ma'am, right now I need you to get me information so I can help you. We will get in touch with your husband as well. But
I need an ambulance.
Okay,
Please.
I have officers and I have ambulance on the way. Right now I need you to talk.
When police arrived to find Sherri, bruised, emaciated and wrapped in chains off the interstate highway some 150 miles from her home, it was difficult to know quite what to make of things. The story that would eventually emerge once Sherri calculated it was the right time to stop babbling hysterically and start speaking in coherent sentences was that while she was jogging on the 2nd, a car pulled up alongside her and before long she was ushered into the back seat at gunpoint. The culprits were two masked Mexican women, Sherri's twist on an old classic.
When asked who the man was, Miss Stotch replied, "Some Puerto Rican guy."
Mrs. Stotch, what did the kidnapper look like?
Puerto Rican.
Was he tall? Short?
He was average Puerto Rican height.
Sherri claimed she was then blinded with a pillowcase and taken to a remote area where she was confined, malnourished, and subjected to various forms of abuse over the days to come. During her stay, she was able to discern from her captors that they planned on selling her and that the quote buyer was a cop, the clear inference being that this was all part of some kind of sex trafficking operation. At some point during her ordeal, she made a heroic attempt to escape, but was foiled, then tied down to a coffee table and branded with an unknown instrument. Sherri believed the branding looked like it was supposed to say Exodus, meaning it was supposed to say Exodus, and the numbers look like they must be either 611, 612, 622, or 621. None of which would be easy to make sense of if traced back to their corresponding biblical passages, as the overarching theme of Exodus is escaping slavery. In terms of how Sherri did eventually manage to make her escape, one day the smaller of the two Mexican women decided to shoot the big one. Not Sherri's words, but it's a safe takeaway from the experience she describes. The small Mexican then blindfolded Sherri again, put her in the back of the car, drove her near the point she wound up being found, and told her to get out before speeding off into the night. Not long after, a nearby church security camera managed to capture Sherri's movements in the early morning hours of the 24th, where she can be seen running across the parking lot for a time before going out of frame. A little while later she returns, going back in the direction she was fleeing from, this time at a more leisurely pace before working back into a jog again, which makes sense as she wouldn't have gotten much cardio in over the last few weeks. There were many more details in Sherri's story, though a lot of them will change over the years with each telling of it. We'll have a look at some of the details in one of her earliest versions that was filmed in her home on November 28th. Now, fair warning, Sherri Papini is kind of annoying. Obviously that isn't a clinical diagnosis, but most of you will probably concur that she has a sort of supercharged feminine quality for which there is no term we're aware of, but that you will likely have encountered at some points in your life. A quality wherein everything seems like it's supposed to be cute, and the most mundane of stories are told as if they were some sort of magical comedy of errors.
Let's talk about the Christmas present with Keith.
Okay.
I started wrapping a Christmas present for Keith, a little American flag pillow that Tyler and I had picked out the night before at Kohl's. And I couldn't find any tape. I had taped one side, ran out of tape, got very frustrated, left it on the ground and left it open because there was no more tape to complete the wrapping of it.
So, you know, we're not going to spend too much time with it, and shit like that is a big part of the reason why. But here's a few things that came up over the course of those 2 hours that are worth noting before moving on to some of the fun stuff.
Before the mailboxes, I start to slow down. I see a vehicle go past Sunrise Drive to, like, the front 2 tires are past the actual street sign, and then it backs up. And I immediately have that feeling of, that was weird. And they back up.
You had a hard time recalling?
It's frustrating because I know she was wearing a hat, but I can't see the color and I can't see her clothes.
Okay. I'll make a note.
She asked for help. I want to say it's maybe like a hey or something to get my attention.
Is the car on Sunrise right now, or is it still on Old Oregon Trail?
It's on Old Oregon Trail. I walked towards where the vehicle had backed up, but was still far enough away from it that, because I was still cautious, I had my phone in my right hand and my earbuds on, and I took out my left to hear her, and then she opened the door, and then I saw the small revolver, and I immediately ducked down. I crouched down, like in a ducking, crouching.
Catcher's
I mean, my
position?
knees weren't on the ground. It was almost...
Can you demonstrate it?
Yes. Phone's in my hand, earbud out, towards the vehicle. This, not all the way down. Laid my phone down.
In the days since her return, Keith has surely told Sherri about all of the thoughts that were rushing through his head in the wake of her disappearance. And we'd bet good money that his observation about the strange placement of her phone that he seemed fixated on from the get-go didn't get left out of a single telling. So naturally, Sherri has made sure to take care of that little detail in her account of the abduction. Her decision to promptly and proactively discard her sole means of contacting outside help was one she immediately regretted, of course.
I put my phone down. As soon as I set it down, I was so mad because I couldn't call my husband. And as soon as I set it down, and then I turned and I pulled my hair out because...
Sherri never actually will wind up elaborating on the reasoning behind pulling her hair out as some sort of defense tactic. It seems like she thinks an explanation is needed for why some of it was found tangled in her headphones. Though in a case where practically everything looks fishy, that one detail was never a huge red flag.
And I ran away, and I didn't, and I should have, and I just...
Do you want to come back up to the table?
And then I got up and went this direction. And I can't remember lifting my leg. I can't remember the back door open.
That much would technically be true, as Dodge Challengers do not have back doors.
The first thing I remember is the nausea and waking up and trying to...
Of all the many, very strange details in Sherri's account, the one that leaps out as perhaps the strangest is her claim to have fallen asleep in the back of the car several times during the commute from the spot she was kidnapped to the house in which she would be held captive. This is in spite of no head knocks or drugging of any kind ever making it into the story of how she was taken, though she will go on to clarify in an interview with the FBI that it was, quote, like a yucky feeling kind of sleep, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean.
The last time I woke up in the car, it was bright. I'm trying to think like were my muscles sore, was my ear sore, because when I lay on my ear for a long time it hurts, and I could wake up and I can't remember any of that.
Do you remember any music as you were driving?
Yes, mariachi music.
Being that Sherri has decided to peg 2 Mexican women for this crime, she makes sure to include little Mexican-y details wherever she can to keep things authentic.
What'd they give you to eat?
Rice, tortillas. One day I got 2 apples.
Since we've touched it twice, you mentioned the house twice, or location where you remember. Can we talk about that?
There was boards on the windows, and I yanked that fucker out of the wall super quick, and that's what got her in the room, was that noise. I was standing on the bed to get to the window. There was 2 boards. It didn't go all the way across the window. It was window, board. I'm doing a terrible drawing. Board. There was no space in between. Sorry.
How about the bathroom? What's that look like?
Oh, there was a crack in the tile. It was a light colored tile that was speckled. There was a crack in the tile. It was always hands on the wall. It was a really high pressured shower with just your standard cheapy shower head. I was never allowed to touch the nozzle.
Was it like a trailer bathroom, manufactured?
There was wood paneling. Like, I could have busted right through the wood paneling. It was very thin, and the walls were thin.
What's the comment about when you were on the cable?
What do you mean?
A minute ago you said when I was on the cable. Were you tethered to a cable?
There was a chain around my waist.
Okay.
So the chain had...
Sure.
Okay, sorry. The chain. So here's a pretty stick figure.
It's impossible to not notice that Sherri will use that same sickly cute affect she does when relaying anecdotes about running out of wrapping tape when she's drawing a sketch of how she was supposedly chained up in a dark closet for almost 3 weeks. In fairness, if someone like Sherri actually did go through what she claims, maybe you could write it off as some sort of coping mechanism. She goes on to draw the closet and layout of the room it was adjacent to in some detail, which will be very important later on, especially this part.
And then there was this pole, stupid pole that was attached here, came down like all the way up. Fucking pole is the only reason why I was there. The cable was here, and it made a turn. I'm sorry for swaying. And then the cable I could reach all the way to the bed. Couldn't reach the door. Couldn't reach the window. Could reach the bed. There was at all times there was a bucket in the closet. That's what I used to go to the bathroom in.
So that's the gist of Sherri's story, and it's one that with the benefit of hindsight, we now know to be just about completely false. Even without the benefit of hindsight though, some of you may be thinking something along the lines of, there's no way I could have listened to at least most of that and not thought it was fishy, to put it mildly, so how come everyone in the room seems like they're buying it hook, line and sinker? And in a similar vein, seeing as it's going to be some 4 odd years before Sherri is actually nailed for all of this, aren't all the pot shots being taken at her lack of criminal know-how too self-satisfied by half? Was Sherri's plan cleverer than it's being given credit for? Or were the police in Reading just shockingly uncritical in their evaluation of her story? The answer is no on both counts. Sherri's plan was unambiguously terrible, and we'll get into more and more detail as to why that's so as the video progresses. For the time being though, one of the main terrible features of it was that in order for it to work, Sherri had to count on one guy, James Reyes, never coming forward with the truth about what happened during those 3 weeks, no matter how out of hand the story got in the media. To that extent, Sherri just got extremely lucky. which circles back nicely to the question of police competence. It's easy for us to sit back and point out all the ways in which Sherri's story is far-fetched, but prosecutors can't level serious charges against a person just because they call bullshit. They have to actually have something material backing their allegations if they want their case to make it to court, let alone get a conviction. So with Sherri being as lucky as she was, the powers that be wound up not having anything material that undermined her claims, but instead just an underlying sense of, And they followed through on that sense, as well as whatever tips came through regarding the phantom kidnappers over the course of those several years, invariably winding up at dead ends, because these investigations often move slowly. But all it takes is one break, and in the spring of 2017, they got the first part of that break when a DNA sample was recovered from the underwear Sherri was wearing on the morning she returned. As a quick aside, it's also worth noting that on May 7th of 2018, Keith Papini contacted FBI investigators to report that during a therapy session, Sherri was able to recover a memory of her two Mexican kidnappers pouring a sticky substance into her mouth, which she then wiped off on her underwear. Anyway, we don't know if the DNA originated from a sticky substance or not, but we do know it definitely didn't come from any Mexican woman, because in March of 2020, again these things often move slowly, investigators got a familial match for the DNA from the FBI's CODIS database, meaning they found a person who, while not being the contributor, was very closely related to whoever that contributor may be. That familial match was none other than the father of one James Reyes, who investigators knew to be an ex-boyfriend of Sherri Papini. On June 9th of 2020, they recovered an iced tea bottle from Reyes's trash, from which they retrieved a DNA sample that matched the previously unknown male DNA found on Sherri's underwear. And then on August 10th, James Reyes got an unexpected knock on the door.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. Are you James? Yes. Hi, how you doing? Good. I'm Kyle Wong from the sheriff's office. Do you have a couple of minutes we can talk?
Sure.
So
what can I help you boys with?
We're here regarding Sherri Papini.
Okay.
And just trying to figure out how you know her. When was the last time you talked to her?
Well, me and Sherri dated back in 2002.
Reyes plays dumb for a little while, and the investigators remain friendly, but after about 10 minutes, they decide it's time to be a little more explicit about their purpose for being here.
We're here for a reason.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So I'm from Shasta County.
Oh, yeah.
He's from the FBI office in Redding, because we're the ones who worked her abduction case.
Okay.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So we got here because we found some evidence that ties you to the abduction side of things, not from a haven't seen her in 10 years.
Okay.
And so here's the deal, James. You know, we're not here to jam you up, but we do want to understand the truth of what happened with Sherri. But
I'm just
at this point, you haven't broken the law.
No, yeah, I'm aware.
But there's information that I think you have about the abduction that we would want to know.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I can get. All I know is what I read about it. You know, I try to look it up.
We're going to start getting on a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I want to stop you before we start falling. Your DNA is found with her at the time that she was found.
Okay. So we know either if she was with you or she was close to you or a house that you've been at.
It's seminal fluid.
The term seminal fluid will certainly sound alarming to James. What the investigators don't mention is that the quantity and condition of the DNA found was consistent with what's called washer transfer, which is basically what it sounds like. I.e., as bad as seminal fluid on underwear may sound, it's not exactly a smoking gun for sexual contact in this case. Though you couldn't fault anyone for having suspicions, especially after Sherri's disclosure of that sticky substance her abductors poured down her mouth. Seeing as it doesn't actually make any material difference precisely where James's DNA came from, it's really just fodder for gossip at the end of the day. The important thing is the investigators' play works, and so after dealing with some bird problems...
It's 8:53, we're pausing because a parakeet flew out of his house and he's got to grab it.
James begins to come clean with what happened and how.
I mean, I'm not trying to lie, you know, okay, I'll be honest. Like, she's a good friend of mine. I know I didn't kidnap her. You know, I just... Friend in need asked me for help.
What was her need? What did she say?
She was trying to get away from her husband, and I don't know their deal.
Okay.
You know, I didn't get deep into that because there's always two sides to every story.
Yeah.
You know, I went and got her.
In what car?
A rental car.
Okay. And then you guys immediately drove down?
Straight down. I mean, a couple stops too.
Did
grab
you stay
coffee.
in the back the whole time?
Yeah. Yeah.
What'd you guys
She'd
talk
lay
about?
down, just, you know, take a nap. I don't know.
Is it okay if I go look in that room, the closet? I'm curious if it's the same as she described it.
Oh, the closet? Yeah.
That's cool.
The closet is going to be very important next time we catch up with Sherri. For now, all we'll say about it is that it's one of several examples of Sherri seeming to have a need for her fantasy to comport with her actual lived experience wherever possible. Nowhere does this become more apparent than the windows to her room.
What about the window? Anything to deal with the window? Did she do anything with the window?
There's just boards over it, so she couldn't see. There was no light coming in. She wanted to be dark.
Who put the boards up?
I did. I just screwed them in there for her.
So Sherri went to the trouble, or rather had James go to the trouble, of boarding up the windows to her bedroom. James will disclose that no neighbours would have had any easy line of sight into that room. Sherri lived out most of her stay at James's house in that room, deprived of virtually all natural light for no one's benefit but her own, presumably just so she could feel a little more like she was in the situation she planned to describe at a later date. She is a very strange woman.
So during that 22 days, she has some significant injuries.
Yeah.
So there's a brand on her.
Yeah.
There's significant bruising. How did all that stuff come about?
She did a lot of that while she was here. I mean, she just hit herself with something. And I helped her. I mean, I didn't punch her or anything. I didn't even put hands on her or anything.
How'd you help her?
She just was just like, bank a puck off my leg. So I shot a puck off her leg, lightly.
To create a bruise.
Yeah.
What about the burns?
That was us, you know. She wanted, what do you call it, a wood burning tool. I mean, I don't even know what it said, and I don't remember what it was. All I know is that I just... You
put the object on
the request.
And then where was she at?
It was right where that chair is. There's a plug right behind that door right there.
Okay.
I mean, it's not... How do you brand somebody like that's asking you to do it? You know, I'm lying, like I don't even know. So I'm like, oh, this is probably gonna hurt. I mean, I've never done this.
What food?
Just whatever I bought. I mean, whatever. I go to the store and just buy food, make tacos.
So she was telling the truth about those tortillas.
I mean, she wasn't starving.
Okay.
But she was not eating as much as she would.
She chose to eat.
Like she'd make food, be like me and you eating every day, but just having half a banana. Then having a meal. She went weight loss, lose weight, become skinny. She's already tiny. I didn't know what the final plan was. Like, were we going to end up together? Was that her plan? I mean, there's a lot surrounding this situation. Like, you know, she was going to stay longer. It was her plan. I don't know how long, but she couldn't be away from her kids anymore. And so she's just like, I'm ready to go. And I'm just like, Thanksgiving Day, I'm just like, are you seriously? Because this time she lived in Buena Park, and I had to.
You had plans, right?
I came down. I drove straight. I never went to sleep. I was awake for like 60 hours, man.
Did she put anything on her?
Yeah, just whatever she had put together. Like whatever I had bought and she put together.
Do you remember?
I can't remember. I know I bought some chain one time for her.
James continues to explain to investigators all the ways in which Sherri came to be in the state she was in when she was found, as well as the elementary, though admittedly effective method they used to keep their contact with each other off the radar with the use of prepaid burner phones. It's around this point that Agent Jackson comes up with a very fun idea.
What do you think Sherri would do if you texted her and said, hey, the FBI said they want to talk to me, what should I tell them?
I don't know.
How do you think she would respond?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to her since that point.
Would you be willing to do that?
I could do it. I mean...
But unfortunately, for whatever reason, that little sting operation never came to pass, so we will forever be denied the pleasure of seeing what those text responses would have looked like. At one point, a woman who seems to be a relative of some kind just sort of wanders into the room and manages to provide this insight.
So we're here during the Sherri Papini stuff. A couple of years ago, she was abducted. It was reported that she was abducted from Reading.
Oh, I heard it on the news.
Okay.
Yes.
He said that you might have known something about him and her at that point.
You mean like when they dated? Like a long time ago?
No, like
during the abduction time.
Mm,
did he tell you that she was here during the abduction time?
kind of, but we kind of kept it, we just didn't talk about it really.
Apparently, multiple members of the Reyes family became aware of Sherri's presence over the course of those 3 weeks, and ultimately they all decided to just not talk about it. It really is hard to overstate just how lucky she was. But with James spilling the beans, that luck had finally run out, and just a few days later, Sherri and Keith were called into the Shasta County Sheriff's Office for what was accurately described as a big break in the case.
Some stuff's come up, so we've always had the DNA out there in the world.
Here's an interesting little game you can play during the first section of this interview. We'll call the game, When Does Sherri Get It? Playing the game is simple. You just have to try and guess at what point it clicks in Sherri's mind that she's in a lot of trouble. There are no right or wrong answers, just like there are no mind readers. But even for Sherri, the penny has to drop sometime before the first direct confrontation, and it's just kind of fun to try and pinpoint the moment.
Sorry, Tom, before we get too far, obviously, just like always, thank you for coming. We appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us. As always, your presence here is voluntary.
Yeah.
You can go at any time, and all we want is truthful statements because it's a crime to lie to federal officers.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good.
Understood?
Yeah.
Well, that would be a pretty good moment to pick. An officer reminding you it's a crime to lie to them is never exactly comforting, and Sherri does look awfully still around this time. It's a shame we can't get a good look at her face. There won't be any glaring signs of nervousness from her in the direct wake of that warning, though, and you have to remember she's been accustomed to receiving the benefit of the doubt for almost 4 years now. So our guess is no. Sherri does not yet get it.
So there's always been DNA out there, and we've done testing after testing. We've gone out to like the Parabon, which is a private company that does all like the genetics, and we've just hit wall after wall after wall. But recently, we found a familial DNA hit.
From Sherri's perspective, this should be very concerning news. If real DNA found on her led to relatives of a real person, well, they can't be relatives of a fake kidnapper, can they? No fidgeting, though. Breathing rate looks pretty normal from this angle. Does Sherri not get it yet?
So one of the things that came out to us, is there anything in there that looks
of interest or notable?
And that's an awkward photo, but
yeah.
No.
So the picture's a little grained out. So
to me, I see a table there that somewhat looks like something you described to me in the past, and then I see wood paneling.
Thanks, Keith. Yes, at this moment, Sherri is being shown a picture of a table photographed in Reyes' house that matches a very specific description she gave to police in August 2017 of the table she was branded on. Stop for a second to marvel at that. Sherri had 22 days to concoct all the details of her story she wanted, yet she still chose to describe a table in Reyes' house complete with all of its most distinct features, ensuring that if the investigation ever did make its way to Reyes' house, she would be all the more linked to it. Suffice to say, Amy Dunn would not be impressed.
Talking about the room?
Yeah, we noted both of those things back in August 2017. And then we spoke with you about, and you showed us this picture of a table.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that, Sherri?
Yeah, I do.
And so when we were trolling through this, Facebook page, we saw just the edge of that table.
Yeah.
Denise caught it, in fact.
Oh, cool.
Denise said, "Hey, Peter."
Sherri certainly shouldn't be feeling a lot of love for Denise and her apparently keen observational skills right now. Is she just putting it on? Or does she still not get it?
Look at this table. And I was like, oh wait, you're right.
Yeah.
And it has the wood paneling.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, where was that photo taken, right? And so we're trying to figure that out.
So,
okay.
So that's led us obviously now to obviously this Facebook page has a person. It's got like people tagged into it, so it has. So Peter has a.
But that's still a valid memory, right? Is that this was the table?
Yeah.
A table like this was the table you were on when you were branded?
And we've been talking about that a lot because so many memories are so faded now.
It's been a long time.
It's been a really long time. So, like, details and things like that, we did the best that we could to take notes on it and all of that, but a lot of it's really hard.
Sure.
It's hard to think about. So were you able to find, like, where that house is?
Yeah.
And what? Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So if you look at this closet,
Okay, if not before when talking about her fading memories of the table, then right here is when we think Sherri truly gets it. She definitely knows she's staring at a picture of James's closet right now, and she definitely knows that's very bad news.
Obviously, there's stuff in there now.
I'm not looking at stuff.
I literally was cleaning papers out yesterday and found that drawing that you didn't. I haven't even looked at the picture yet, but I've seen it now. Can I look at it?
Now Sherri is in a real bind. Obviously she'll want to distance herself from this closet as much as possible, but her memory genuinely will have faded over the years, and as such she won't have perfect recall of exactly what details she did and did not give when originally describing the closet to police. So what details should she now identify as not being in line with her surroundings while she was being held captive? It's a tough one, especially considering, just like with the table, she did, astoundingly, use this specific closet, complete with its very distinct feature of a metal pole smack bang in the middle of it, as her point of reference when giving that first description.
It's a little bit different, but it's pretty, excuse my language, it's pretty fucking similar. But it's different.
what's different or what's the same?
It's hard. There's a lot of shit in the photos, but...
Then Sherri finds herself in exactly the same predicament with the bedroom off the closet and the boarded up windows within.
Window. With the wood paneling?
I feel like this wood paneling is too thick, but I mean,
you mean this
there
way?
was wood paneling, but I can't remember something like that being there, and I don't remember. Remember it going all the way up to the window is what I'm having trouble remembering.
The window in that photo has holes along the edges.
And there's holes.
You know what you mean by that, right?
Yeah, hold on a second here.
We're going fast.
By the time they get to the bathroom, even Keith seems to be getting irked by Sherri's umming and ahhing in response to these spot-on matches.
That, and it couldn't even be a detail that's flipping important.
So far, everything
So one of the things that we always noted in the bathroom description is just the weird layout of the bathroom. Do you remember the layout of the bathroom?
Yes. Well,
Let's talk about the description, best description, and then we'll start showing some pictures.
there's door, toilet, sink, tub. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
You walk in the door, first there's the toilet.
Yes.
On the
Right which side?
If I'm...
She's the worst in the world, just in general.
I am.
Sherri reviews the bathroom photos and decides her best play at this point is to just stick with every specific detail is the same, but it's still different.
This doesn't look like the bathroom to me, but the order is... Yes, this is the type of order, but this is not what it looked like to me.
And
so the order is correct, but you don't recognize the bathroom as being what you recall. Do you remember there was a detail about the shower that you provided previously? Something on the tile or something like that? Do you remember any
There
of
was
those?
tile on the bed, there was a crack.
Where was the crack? It's not a memory test. If you don't remember, that's fine, but We remembered that detail when we took some of these photos, and we were just wanted to bump it up against which you might remember.
I don't know.
In general, are we talking about, okay.
Sherri really is going into problem-solving overdrive now. If she tries to move the location of the crack in the tiling of the bath, then she's contradicting her previous statements. If she affirms the detail, well, she knows exactly what's going to be put in front of her.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to get myself there, and
Just as a reminder, I do remember when we went to my grandma's house.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't like her tile because it reminded you of that. I think I sent.
You sent us a picture.
Yes.
That's why I would say we.
That's what I just want to remind her, because if you think of that, because I can't even think of what her tile looks like right now, but I do remember you didn't like that at all.
God, faking trauma at the sight of the tiling in Keith's grandma's bathroom. Can you imagine the amount of nonsense this man has had to tolerate and support for the last several years and prior?
So this crack is in a different location than this crack, which is probably better viewed in this photo.
And now Detective Wallace will share some news that notably only Keith seems to be excited about.
We're showing you all of this because ultimately this is the house that you were at. We talked to the people that live there. We found the house. We found who was involved. We talked to who was involved. We talked to family who knows that you were there, and talked to a couple people talked to one guy who did see you during this event. Unfortunately, there's a lot of truths, and then there's some unknowns. Like one of the simple ones, well, this description of the bathroom is just weird. That was an argument in all of our offices where we were sitting there this part's weird. But then we find a house with it.
It's unique to this place. That's a pretty custom. You can't just go out to IKEA and buy a closet that looks like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So once we have all those things and we start talking to the person who lives here, who had lived there, who still lives there, start talking to his family and starting that whole investigation, peeling one thing back after another, doing the same thing we've done for the last 4 years. It led us to a specific person, but not a female. It led us to the car that picked you up, but not an SUV. So there's lots of different aspects that are truths and falses. Because the DNA came back, like I said, to a specific person. That specific person told us very specific things. We can talk with Keith or without Keith here. What would you like? It's completely up to you.
It's been a long road, Sherri, but we just want to talk to you, and we can have Keith step out if that's going to make you more comfortable.
It's up to you.
Do you want to step out or do you want to stay?
Obviously, I want to stay.
One of the most interesting things to observe in all of this is just how not taken aback Keith is by the obvious shift in tone. It's almost as if a part of him has been anticipating a moment like this for years.
Or we can do a little bit of both. Talk to you alone first and then have him come back in.
We changed the tone of the interview.
You can feel it already in the room from the way you walked into what you're feeling right now.
So if you want Keith to leave, I'll ask Keith nicely to leave. If you don't want Keith to leave, then he can sit here and
let's press on. Press on.
And we'll move on to the next stages.
Yeah, there's no trick here. We're just trying to make sure that you're as comfortable to talk because you can't be to talk to us truthfully.
They're asking you. They're not asking me. Obviously, I would want to be here and whatever needs to come out.
And you can change your mind in the future too if you
But
want
no
to
matter what,
change
it's going to be up. So,
like I said in the beginning, you're free to go. So if you wanted to chat with them privately, that's fine too. But we want to talk to you.
And we can leave the room, give you guys the room for a couple minutes. This next stage of things, could be benign.
To state the obvious, there is nothing Sherri could say to the information the officers plan to put in front of her that could render it benign. Ultimately, she does go with the leave me and Keith together for a moment option. And while this video has mocked Sherri for her lack of cunning on occasion, it's important to give credit where it's due, because she does seem to have a real intuition for one golden rule. If you're sitting in a police interview room where you know you're being taped, but you have some hastily thrown together lies to tell your partner that you don't want police or future YouTubers to hear, make sure to lower your voice a bit, like almost to a whisper even.
You need to stop waiting around and telling the truth. I don't want to. Yeah, whatever you're doing.
I don't give a shit about that. I don't want them to find her. I don't want them to find her. I don't want her to be arrested. I don't want to press charges on her. I don't want to find her.
The her Sherri is referring to is the smaller of the two Mexican women. The narrative she's going to attempt to build from here is basically one wherein she wants to protect the captor who seemed to facilitate her escape. This would actually make some sense were it not for the fact that Sherri has been enthusiastically aiding an investigation to track this phantom woman down for years up until this very moment.
Right now.
I don't know. I don't want them to find her. You're not listening to
Tell
me.
me why.
Because she saved my life.
Tell me, honey, there's obviously something. Tell me this is going to be really bad.
Look at I'm talking right now. I am. Yeah, it's fucking with you.
Well, that's not me.
I don't want them to find her. I don't want to press charges, and I don't want to go down that road.
But you tell her?
I don't want to go down that road. I don't want
Tell
to
me why.
advise her. Because she saved my life, and she's the reason why I get to hold my children every single day. I don't want to get in. I don't want them to fucking find her. I don't know what I don't want them to arrest her.
Why?
Because she saved my life.
So you don't press charge. They still need to find out who it is. No matter what happens, you think this just sits here? This comes out, they find the house, it's over. Whatever happened is over. And it doesn't matter what you say. The girl's gonna get in trouble.
Keith's reasoning here is very sound, and it seems he's now truly done with playing the role of sad sap on the sidelines. You can basically pinpoint the moment he takes his power back.
You're not making sense to me to the point where I'm getting scared. So you need to tell me what's going on immediately. Yeah.
Right there. In the face of Sherri's desperation, Keith's response to an ominous knock is, "Come right in, officers. We're looking at a new man now."
Or I can hop in and phone later. Thank you. Just didn't you want me in the room or not?
And obviously,
Hopefully you've had a chance to chat briefly.
the fears,
Later, maybe. But I'd rather you just answer the question.
nothing that I'll say to you, I won't eventually tell him if you want me to.
The investigators will now transition into laying their discoveries on Sherri. And as they do, we again encourage you to keep an eye on Keith, because even as the revelations become increasingly more insane, his body language, particularly the continuously nodding head, seems to say, "Oh yeah, this makes sense."
Sherri, look at me. What do you want?
I don't want her to get in trouble.
She's not going to get in trouble. So the DNA came back to James Ray's.
The DNA that was on you belongs to James Ray's.
The picture, and can I get the picture? The picture of the table is James Ray's little brother who died recently. We talked to him. We've been on a polygraph. We talked to everybody around him. We have the rental agreements, phone rental, the car rental agreements. We have everything that says that he said he told the truth.
That's James' brother, deceased Nick.
So everything, you've told us so many truths in this situation. The reason why you can describe the room is because you stayed in the room in the dark for hours, for days on end. The reason why you lost so much weight is because you stopped eating. The reason why you got a rash on your arm was because you cleaned his house. The reason why the brand is because he went to the store, bought the branding tools, and branded you. The reason why your nose was broke is because of a hockey stick. I know all of those things, and I know there was no sex. I know all of that because he passed a polygraph test.
Detective Wallace will make repeated appeals to polygraph results when putting the pressure on Sherri. Standard disclaimer that this channel puts no stock in polygraphs beyond sometimes being effective interrogation props, and you can watch a full video making that case linked in the description. So as far as we're concerned, whether or not Sherri ever had sex with James Reyes as a reward for his assistance is still a totally open question. But really, at this point, who cares?
That said, it's not an abduction. She asked me to come together.
No.
I rented a car.
No.
I drove up and picked her up. He passed the polygraph test, Sherri.
If that's not what happened, what did happen, Sherri?
I don't know. No, there's no way it's James. There's no way.
There's a not too difficult to spot attempt at testing the possibility of throwing James under the bus here. There's no way it's James, instead of something to the effect of, I didn't do these things. Sherri's trying to protest a suggestion that hasn't been made, i.e. that James Reyes kidnapped her. It's beyond optimistic of her to think anyone in this room would wind up entertaining such a notion, especially given what the police have just told her they know.
Even collected blonde hairs from the room.
There's no way it's James. There's no way.
Why are you saying it's not James?
He loves me.
What's up?
We were friends. There's no way.
And he came and got you because you asked him.
No.
When was the last time you had contact with James?
Brother died.
Brother died in 2017. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Was it before or after the abduction? Before.
There is no way it's him.
Well, it is James.
The DNA tells us that it was his DNA on it.
And when we talked to him and confronted him with the DNA,
he told us what happened.
He 100% told us what happened.
And gave us details that nobody else would know.
And we can call him and we can all talk about it. But ultimately, can you look at me for a second? Ultimately, we put him on a polygraph like we did Keith. Keith was inconclusive, to be honest with you, on whether he was involved or not. But 100% James was showing the truth.
Detective Wallace continues to stress the polygraph results, and much, much more importantly, the fact that all available receipts, phone records, and other actual material pieces of evidence align with Reyes' story. Sherri, for her part, just buries her head in her hands, perhaps hoping that if she can't see Detective Wallace for long enough, he'll cease to exist and none of this last hour will have ever happened.
He did have bruises all over, but how those bruises got there are because you did it and James did some. The reason why your nose got broke is because you held the hockey stick to your face and he forced it into your nose. The reason why the brand is in a straight line is because he did it. He described exactly where it was. He told us exactly how he did it, where he did it, how he did it. Only you and I and maybe 5 other people know where the brand was. He told me immediately. Robert told friends and family you were there. His mom knew that you were there because of course it went news and everybody knew you guys dated. Everybody knew you guys had a relationship. So when it happened, of course, family reached out to him. He told them, yeah, she was here. But it said it hurt her. I didn't hurt her. So,
what are you thinking, Sherri?
That doesn't make any sense.
Why doesn't it make sense?
What actions doesn't make sense?
A lot of it doesn't make sense.
Can we talk about those?
No.
Are you calling James a liar? Are we not believing James what he told me?
No.
I know you're
I
scared.
cannot believe that it is James.
I can't believe James told us the truth. That's what I can't believe. He passed a polygraph, Sherri.
So did Keith.
No, he didn't. He was inconclusive. And he was involved.
So James is involved.
So now we've graduated from fake protests of it can't be James to trying to concede that he was involved. You almost have to admire the tenacity of trying to pull off a frame job this late in the game. But if you want to implicate an ex-boyfriend in a kidnapping that never happened, you have to set up all the pieces of your story while you're still in his house, then lure him into the confines of his bedroom with the promise of sex where you slash his throat and stage the ensuing bloodbath to look like a struggle. Leaving him alive and trying to set him up after he's already told on you just won't cut it.
Saying since your marriage you haven't called James?
No, I haven't called James.
Because earlier you said you had contacted James. His phone records show that you do. You did.
It will never be known what Sherri was trying to convey in this moment by pointing to Agent Jackson while looking at Keith. Maybe something along the lines of, hey, all the stuff this guy's saying right now, you know.
Phones don't lie, the DNA doesn't lie, Sherri.
The investigators continue to stress the hopelessness of Sherri's situation, and Sherri continues to sob. Keith leaves the room, and Agent Jackson tries an alternative question on her. Did she run away because of abuse? It's a good one, seeing as that's what James Reyes alleges she at least insinuated when appealing to him for help. Sherri, to her credit, doesn't take the bait, though.
Now it's your opportunity to say, were there issues between you and Keith? Is that why you needed to leave? I mean, we read your text message. We're already aware of some issues, but enlighten us if that's the case. If there was a valid reason for you to leave, let me know what that was.
James said you had your jaw broken by him, and that's why he came and got you, because you were in an abusive relationship.
My husband.
She's got a funny way of showing it, though, doesn't she? Apparently it's not the first time Sherri's leveled false accusations of abuse toward Keith either.
There was an incident at a party that you got heard playing, like, I don't know, Wii or Pictionary or something, and then you told other friends that Keith heard you. When there was witnesses at the party that said that you got hurt during a party.
And from what's known about what would invariably transpire following such incidents, these accusations were never aimed at getting Keith into any real trouble. Just as with the much grander lie that Sherri sits in this room for, it was all a sort of morbid form of play acting for which she presumably thought there would be no lasting consequences. The next hopeless play Sherri makes is attempting to deflect from the accusations at hand by confessing to the much lesser misdeed and non-crime of texting with James Reyes, among other men, in the lead-up to her disappearance.
We've gotten over...
I love my husband. I love my husband, and I made mistakes, and I talked to other men that I shouldn't have.
But we took it a step farther this time.
This is a little different than just chatting with them. I appreciate you talking and being forthright about the other guys you were talking to. When did it turn into something more? Obviously, you never would have imagined that CNN and 2020 and Good Morning America would care about you wanting to leave Keith or wanting to teach him a lesson or wanting to get him in line.
No, I was just talking to James, and I don't want to leave my husband.
Right,
I love my husband.
How are you talking? How are you talking to James?
I don't want to leave my husband.
There's more shouldn't have been talking to other guys and don't want to leave my husband for a while before Sherri goes back to it can't be James.
Can't be James.
It is James.
Sherri, the DNA doesn't lie. He understood that the DNA didn't lie, so he came clean. Now it's your chance to do the same. And if you don't, you're going to be shaking your head later and say, I should have told him what happened.
Talk to me like that.
Like what?
Then back to shouldn't have been talking to other guys.
I was talking to
What's that?
This is all my fault. I was talking to so many guys.
Well, we know
Such a stupid thing to do.
there's a big jump and a leap from talking to men to getting in a car with somebody. But that getting into a car with somebody is somebody you had a relationship with. He told us so many things. And he did it all for you. Nobody else. He got nothing out of this.
And you're welcome to go home, Sherri. But right now is your opportunity to tell us the truth. And
Can't be.
And toward the end, she even tries for not wanting to get the small Mexican in trouble again. Just incorrigible, this woman.
Who picked you up? Was it James or was it a female that pointed a gun at you?
I'm not talking to you about that. I'm not going to get anybody in trouble. I've told you before, I do not want anyone to get in trouble.
Well, you're going to get yourself in trouble at this point. That's where we're at.
You're saying that it's James.
No,
we're saying James's DNA was on you. We know you were in that room at his house.
Then who
So the
is
question
the
is-
woman? Then who is the woman?
Well,
Okay.
the
That's why we're asking you. It
Did
was
the
a
woman
woman.
point a gun at you and put you in the car, yes or no? Is that where we're at?
Don't remember.
You don't remember if a female pointed a gun at you and put you in the car? Is that what you're saying, Sherri?
I've always told you I don't remember getting in the car. I've always told you I don't remember getting in the car.
Correct. But did a female point a gun at you, yes or no?
Remember.
Yes or no? It's not a remember thing. You've already told me that today.
You know who she is. I know you do.
It was always
You
Keith.
know who she is. I know you know who she is. I am not
we're on the
saying
wrong-
it. I don't want her to get in trouble.
She's not
I
getting in
know you know who she is.
You're getting in trouble.
I am
That's-
not. I didn't do anything.
Right? But right now, answer this one question. Did a female point a gun at you, yes or no?
I am done speaking to you until I talk to a lawyer. I will not arrest her. I am with my children because of her. There is no way that he loves me.
You did love. I agree.
With the right to an attorney asserted, the confrontation has to come to a close, though Agent Jackson does ask Sherri one more question, likely in all earnestness, but that could be read as a subtle dig given the context of Sherri's deeds.
One more question, just for your own welfare. Do you feel like harming yourself?
Welfare.
Do you feel like harming yourself?
No, I just hug my children and go home.
Okay. Well, you're free to go and do that.
And that was that. The case was solved, Keith was out of the dark, and at long last, Sherri Papini discovered a type of attention she didn't like.
Hey, what's up, Sherri? On your husband?
I'm sorry,
You lie to investigate. Are you cheating on your husband?
Today in the court, the judge said,
Sir, you don't want to say
anything. You don't want to say anything.
Are you scared of going to prison? Are you scared of going to prison? Hey, go on, girl. Are you scared to go to prison? What about all the hard people who donated money, Sherri? Huh?
What do you
How do
say
you feel
about
about
saying
that?
that you defrauded?
How was I can tell? You and your husband?
And so the story ends in the same way it began, with Sherri Papini lying down on the back seat of a car, not being kidnapped. Ultimately, she would plead guilty to counts of lying to a federal officer and mail fraud, in a deal that gave her 18 months in prison versus a maximum of 25 years. It's not in any way similar to the ending of Gone Girl, where Amy Dunn sits down for a gushing TV interview, husband Nick by her side, secretly filled with dread by the prospect of bringing a child into this world with a woman he now knows to be a maniacal psychopath. You'll be glad to know Keith called it quits after the truth finally came out. And while technically it's too early to say what the custody arrangement will be in the long term, it's a pretty safe bet that any amount of time Sherri gets with the kids will be at his sole discretion. Another thing about Gone Girl's ending is that, as depressing as it may be, at least we're not left wondering why. Amy planned to frame Nick for her murder because she hated him for failing to live up to her ideals of what a husband should be. Then, when she decided perhaps he could live up to those ideals upon witnessing his completely insincere but perfectly acted network interview, she decided to let him off the hook on the condition he keep that act up, locking him in by covertly inseminating herself with his sperm. It's pretty messed up, but at least we understand what her angle is. With Sherri though, it's still sort of baffling. Obviously there's the pathological craving for attention thing, no escaping that. But the ordeal Sherri put herself and countless others through in late 2016 was such an order of magnitude more extreme than a teenager running away from home or telling friends lies about abuse that no matter how much you read into the case, you're left feeling like there simply must be some sort of catalyst for that dramatic escalation that somehow just hasn't come to light yet. For a woman with just about everything going for her to throw it all away, there must be something more. It just doesn't make sense. Until the moment it sort of does. We think such a moment can be found toward the beginning of Sherri's November 28 interview. She never says a word, but her face tells you everything.
Where you have police officers, detectives, investigators, whatever you want to call them, that are invested in people's lives. I've cried in the shower because of frustration. I'm tearing up now. Okay? I mean, that's the level of care that you have. There's a heart involved when we actually care or give a shit about people. Okay? And for whatever reason, God has allowed it, that He and I are on your team.
Some people will just always yearn to be cared for, no matter how much they already are.